130% increased damage. Oh hi, we're getting 32 different Malignant Hearts, but which one is actually good for Necromancer? There's 4 class-specific ones and a bunch of generals. I already went down and theorycrafted with all of them for every single Necromancer build. Let's first talk about how hearts work in general, and then which ones you should be looking for, depending on what Necromancer build you're playing. It's quite simple. We have 4 different Malignant Hearts: Vicious, Brutal, Devious, and Wrathful. They each go into a certain socket color in your jewelry: red, blue, pink. And the Wrathful Heart can go in any socket. So you're gonna find a good ring, an amulet, and these need to have the respective socket color as well for which heart you're looking for. That's the absolute basics. Now let's look at the Necromancer specific hearts. The Sacrilegious. The Sacrilegious. Walking near a corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second, dealing 40 to 30% reduced damage. That means if you have corpse skill in your bar and corpse tendrils, just being close to corpses will every second on top of whatever you do also just randomly trigger one of these 2 skills, and you have to do nothing. It just constantly happens. And the first thing that pops in my mind is, remember that Necromancer that is in Blood Mist the whole time and goes around in Blood Mist to do shadow damage to everyone, and that could now automatically just trigger more corpses by you just existing? Well, that sounds pretty good. Also, Bone Spear Necro, regardless of that, just triggering more corpses. Summoner Necromancer triggering more. Like, this is good for every kind of Necro, to be honest. And the main corpse skills that we all use is Tendrils and Corpse Explosion, almost exclusively in every single build. And yes, heads up, Erase Skeleton is a summoning skill, not a corpse skill. This gets followed up by the Decrepit Aura, probably my favorite heart that you 100% want to have. Followed up by the Decrepit Aura. When at least 5 enemies are near, gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies with Decrepify for 5 to 15 seconds. The only interesting part about this heart is that you could remove Decrepify from your skill bar, because at least 5 enemies near you gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies. Again, in Finny Mist build, you kind of go into them and you automatically cast Decrepify. So you could move it out of your skill bar to put any other skill in. Remember that aspect that gives you more shadow damage when you Decrepify and Iron Maiden your opponents. That would mean if I actually put Iron Maiden into my bar, but have Decrepify skilled, with the Decrepit Aura, I could get 40% multiplicative, actually they buffed it to 50% multiplicative shadow damage on all my things for free, because I could just keep cursing enemies automatically. Sounds, there's a build there. Followed up by Frozen Terror. Lucky hit, up to a 10 to 20% chance to inflict fear for 2 seconds. Feared enemies are chilled for 20% every second. And that one is a little bit shitty because you don't want to fear people away. You want to pull them together to kind of destroy them with your spells. So don't really see where Frozen Terror works. No, not with Bloodless Scream or anything, or bonus freeze or whatsoever. Frozen Terror just really doesn't make sense to me, honestly. And now the most interesting one for varied builds, the Great Feast. Each minion drains 1 to 2 essence per second, but deals 50 to 75% increased damage. It doesn't say multiplicative here, so I would have to see if this is actually multiplicative or additive. With no minions, this bonus applies to you and drains 5 essence per second. And that's even more interesting because you get bonus damage, but you drain your essence. Again, let's think about the build. Infinity Mist Necromancer that goes for Infinite Blood Mist doesn't actually use essence. The Ring of Mendon Bone Prison Summoner doesn't use essence. So you just get bonus damage by just existing. The only essence you actually use with the Mendon Summoner, for example, is for cursing. But that could also be the Decrepit Aura, or you could just have enough essence. I mean, it's only a 5 essence drain per second. And there's actually a neutral gem that also works really well to this. We'll come to that later. But this one has many uses for Necromancer builds that are essentially essence-less, that are not using core skills. They're using only Corpse Tendrils, Corpse Explosion, and other shenanigans. So very good gems so far. None for blood, though. This is like not really working much for blood builds. Okay, let's be real. Actually, the walking near corpses automatically activates corpse skills. That could work for a blood build, to use Corpse Explosion in your bar and then use Corpse Explosion to actually regain essence on a blood build, because every second you would essentially get 6 essence for doing a free Corpse Explosion. Oh, the blood build just got improved as well. You see, these Malignant Hearts are going to be supercharging the existing builds and making things even more fun if you actually dive deep into it and enjoy. And yes, we'll obviously make more in-depth build guides, because I'm going to level up probably 2-3 Necromancers again this season, so we can really test out everything in depth. Now to the general hearts though. The Picana. Critical strikes electrically charge the enemy for 8 seconds, causing lightning to arc between them and any other charged enemies dealing lightning damage. Now, the Necromancer doesn't have any kind of lightning damage interaction, so I don't see how we can make use of this. I know the Druid has lightning damage interactions, so I would assume that that is more for the Druid or more for the Mage. Followed up by the Dark Dance. Every 5 seconds while above 60% life, 4 skills cost life instead of your primary resource. Skills that consume life deal 10 to 20% increased damage. That one in a blood build, because a blood build heals in general. Or that one also in a Bone Spear build, because every 5 seconds while above 60% life, your core skills just cost life. And that's it. And you deal more damage for it. So every 5 seconds you get a stronger hit. That works in blood, because you're just always essence starved in blood. That works for Sever. That works for Bone Spear. That even works for blind. It just works. I mean, for blood, it's obvious because blood just heals up the life you've actually been using straight away. And I assume this one will scale even higher, because it says in the description that these are all hearts that would drop for a level 20 character. So I assume these are the weakest version of the hearts. Next one is Tempting Fate. And this one is super interesting and makes also the critical strike nerfs be sense making. You gain 40 to 60% critical strike damage, but your non-critical strikes deal 20 to 15% less damage. That's pretty nice, especially if this turns out to be multiplicative and not additive. Then you would get an absolutely insane amount of critical strike damage. I mean, 40 to 60% plus for just putting a socket in. We'll go from 380 to 440%, and then add even more multiplications on top with the Golem sacrificial bonus. Zero complaints. I'll play it. Sever, Bone Spear, Mendil for more high crits. Yes. Lionheart. You gain 10% barrier generation. You heal 3 to 7 life per second while you have an active barrier. This one, again, the lowest version of the heart, so the higher version is actually possible. And the first thing that came to my mind is, what about Temerity? You know, the unique pans that give you barrier on overhealing, and then you get more barrier generation, and you actually heal per second while you have an active barrier, and you would play this with a blood build where you actually heal when you're using your ability to then get more barrier. That one should actually lead to always having a barrier like crazy. Not even remotely like that. Could be fun. How efficient it is, we don't know, but could be fun. 10 to 20% of incoming damage revenge. 10 to 20% of incoming damage is instead suppressed. When you use a defensive subterfuge or macabre skill, all suppressed damage is amplified by 250% and explodes, dealing up to 2000 fire damage to nearby enemies. Interestingly enough, macabre skills are your curses, if I'm not mistaken. So if I actually curse, I explode fire damage. And this is a save 10 to 20% of incoming damage instead suppressed. So that means that 20% damage reduction with a gem. And now you're kind of like, okay, so disobedience got nerfed. I get less armor, but I have a gem that would give me 20% damage reduction flat for a fire damage burst. I mean, the fire damage itself makes no sense, because why would I care about a fire damage burst? But getting 20% damage reduction, and that is the weakest form. I don't know if this goes like higher to 30-40%, but yeah, I like that. This is actually cute. I mean, I would not complain about 20% damage reduction. Then we have the Prudent Heart, which seems kind of useless. You become immune for 2 to 4 seconds after you lose more than 20% of life in a single hit. This effect can only occur once every 110 seconds. It's kind of interesting for high nightmare dungeons, though, if this would actually save you from one hit. Because in nightmare dungeons or in tier 100 dungeons, you get one hit. And if every 110 seconds I could avoid getting one hit, that's nice. Because any damage in a tier 100 dungeon actually kills my Necromancer straight away. So if with a Prudent Heart I can avoid a one hit, then that's good for the absolute end game. And maybe for hardcore characters as well. Determination. Resource draining effects are 40 to 50% less effective. In addition, gain 3 to 8% increased resource generation. Now, resource draining effects, you know that we just had the other heart that was draining our resource. Interesting. Also, I'm not sure if resource draining effects also is going down on channeling, because if every channel ability is 40 to 50% less taking your resource, that would also be extremely interesting. But in general, the determination could be paired together with a Necromancer gem to lose less resource, because right now we lose 1 to 2 for every minion. But if that is 50% less, that's kind of nice, because it's 0.5 then per minion. Again, it's for essence-less builds, but still bears like investigation. There's retaliation. Deal 500 to 600 fire damage to surrounding enemies whenever a crowd control effect is removed from you. Don't see where that really works with the Necromancer, because we have no fire damage interaction, so we can't do fire damage. We can't amplify fire damage, so it doesn't really work for us. Next, the calculated. After spending 150 to 200 of your primary resource, your next attack stuns enemy hit for 2 seconds. Spending 150 to 200 of your primary resource for a 2-second stun. I mean, it's bonus stagger, yes, but I'm not filling up my resource fast enough to consistently get this. I mean, 150 to 200 seems a little bit too much for a 2-second stun and seems completely useless. I'm not sure how fast rogues, mages, barbarians, and druids actually fill up their main resource. But yeah, either I play a resource-less build as a necro, or as soon as I'm out of resource, I need to soak it back up again. I mean, maybe in a blood build, but that only for bonus stagger against bosses doesn't really seem to be worth it. And I have corpse tendrils for stun. Malignant Pact is quite interesting. Cycle through a malignant bonus every 20 kills. This is obviously for dungeon pushing. So if you're later in nightmare dungeons and you're trying to rush through them, yes, every 20 kills, it happens quite often. First cycle is vicious 20% attack speed. So you would just have 20% attack speed. Then you kill 20 enemies and you gain devious. Core and basic skills have a 15% chance to fully restore your primary resource. Imagine that on a blood build. So first you kill 20, you get 20% attack speed. You run through, bop, 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 explode everything. You get resource refill, bop, 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 explode everything, refill your resource during that. And then you jump already in the next one, which is brutal. Every 21 seconds, gain a barrier absorbing damage. Get your barrier, kill 20 again, attack speed. I'm just not sure if one of the bonus will linger or if the bonus straight up gets canceled as soon as you kill 20. Because like this says every 20 kills and every 21 seconds gain a barrier. Like the last brutal effect seems a little bit weird, because if I take 21 seconds to kill another 20, you know, and I'm just going to kill them faster because I'm zooming. Now a very good one for Shadow Necros. Your damage over time effects are increased by 30 to 40% for each different crowd control effect on the target. Unstoppable monsters and staggered bosses instead take 110 to 130% increased damage from your damage over time effects. Now, I'm kind of confused a little bit, because it says for each different crowd control effect on the target, 30 to 40%. So we have slow, stun, immobilize, freeze, and chill as the Necromancer possible with all our abilities. There would technically be 5 crowd control effects, unless one overrides the other. If freeze overrides chill, it's only 4. But all in all, if I count that together, if I would apply 5, then I would get 200% bonus damage. But if the monster is unstoppable or staggered, I only get 130%. Regardless of this, the Creeping Death seems to be absolutely perfect for Infinimus Necromancer again, for the Shadowblight Necromancer, for the Shadowblight Summoner. So Shadowblight main Necromancer with the Bone Storm and the Shadow Skills, or Shadowblight Summoner that was using, instead of Bone Prison, the Blight. And then you do more damage over time effects, and you actually scale that up even more now due to all the crowd control effects you're applying. It's quite interesting if you don't want to rely on the bugged interaction with Bone Prison and want to use Blight instead, like your core skills, to quite have some fun. Creeping Death is just giving you straight up a huge damage boost for free for your build. Last but not least, the Barber. Critical strikes and all subsequent damage within 2 to 4 seconds is absorbed by your target. Then the absorbed damage erupts onto surrounding enemies. Stored damage is increased by 10% per second. I think that makes only sense if you have single target high critical strike damage, because for me personally as the Necro, my critical strikes are with the Sever, for example, hitting everyone, with a Bone Spear hitting everyone, with a Blind, and even with a Mendel kind of, well, Mendel is single target critical strike, so that could be interesting. But I don't really see where the Necro profits from the Barber, to be honest. There's others that definitely do more. Which of the Malignant Hearts are you excited for? I know a lot of frustration with a patch, but in general, I think these Malignant Hearts will make a lot of our builds even more fun. For the Sever Summoner, for the Mendel Summoner, for the Blight Summoner, and for the Infinimus, which I'm definitely going to build. And don't worry, we're also going to build the new Bone Storm Necro as soon as we pick up, hopefully, the new unique, because that one promises to be quite some fun. Now, if you're looking for the Sever Summoner, which essentially went from 1.5 million crits to 1.3 million at level 70, well, the nerf didn't affect us at all. It's top tier. Or the Blood Summoner, which is super fun and got only stronger with the patch. It got only stronger. Thank you very much, Blizzard.